Welcome to The Window on talkSPORT, brought to you by Intuit Quickbooks. Save time and unlock growth with integrated business tools and AI automation all in one place. Yes, guys, welcome back to The Window, and I'm delighted to be joined once again by our transfer guru, talkSPORT's very own Ben Jacobs. Ben, how are you, my friend? You well?
Busy times, lots of breaking news.
Yes, well, there is lots of breaking news, so the floor is yours. I understand there's been some developments in the Andy Robertson to Tottenham saga.
Yeah, so Andy Robertson is keen on a move to Tottenham, and Liverpool and Spurs are in talk. Spurs were going to sign Robertson as a free agent in the summer. Ben Davies's ankle injury has made them reconsider, even though Sousa, another left-back, has already arrived from Santos, and now club-to-club talks are underway. But Andy Robertson is very much in love with Liverpool, and Liverpool are very respectful to Andy Robertson. So a move is only going to happen if it suits not just Robertson, but Liverpool as well. And here comes a bit of breaking news, a talkSPORT exclusive, that if Andy Robertson goes to Spurs now, our understanding is Liverpool will approach Roma to recall Kostas Tsimikas, who's doing really well there at the moment after a difficult start. Now, there's no formal recall clause in Tsimikas' loan, but sources close to the player have told talkSPORT he wants to return to Liverpool, and it's a real opportunity for him to compete with Milos Kerkez. So keep an eye on Andy Robertson to Tottenham, potentially talks ongoing at the time of recording. It could move relatively fast. And then if that domino falls, Liverpool to go to Roma to try and recall Kostas Tsimikas.
I mean, this is insane. I didn't see this coming today, Ben. What's the likelihood of Andy Robertson choosing to join Tottenham? Like you mentioned, Milos Kerkez was bought in the summer. Andy Robertson's deal expires this summer. Is this a move that Andy Robertson would be looking for at this stage of his career?
Yeah, I think that Andy Robertson has had Tottenham on his radar, so bringing it forwards, if it gives him game time, even though Destiny Udogie is, of course, there, might be something the player is prepared to do. And Liverpool, like I say, will be respectful of Robertson's wishes. They were prepared to grant the talks and also engage with Spurs, so that shows you where the direction of travel is. But this has to be right in terms of timing, in terms of cost, and in terms of a Liverpool replacement as well. From Tottenham's point of view, it may take some by surprise because Sousa joined for 13 million, highly regarded left-back from Santos, but there'll be an acclimatisation period, and let's not forget as well, he's still very young too. So really all that's happened here is Ben Davies unfortunately fractured his ankle. Tottenham have decided to move Robertson forwards to now rather than wait until he's a free agent. And because the direction of travel has always been that Robertson wouldn't be given a new Liverpool contract, Liverpool may, under the right circumstances, be prepared to sanction this, but only if they find defensive cover. And Kostas Tsimikas would be the obvious choice compared to going out and buying another left-back, as opposed to somebody coming back who's now performing well for Roma and knows Liverpool Football Club very well.
Yeah, this is a story that's breaking in the last sort of half an hour or so. I think initially Tottenham were looking at taking Robertson as a free agent when his contract expires in the summer. We're told they're looking to bring that interest forward to this window. There has been an approach made by Tottenham to Liverpool. Liverpool appreciate the service that he's given, and they have therefore entered into talks, but I'm told there's still a few things that need to happen. I'd imagine...
Is it something that they're going to try and allow to happen because they feel as if they owe him a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. But obviously they've got to put the club's interest first, and you mentioned they are a little bit light in defensive areas already. So I would imagine they may look to source a replacement before they enable this deal to happen. But what does seem pretty certain from these conversations is that Robertson's career at Anfield, be it in this window or in the summer, is coming to an end.
Maybe he wants to be a starter. He's not happy with playing second choice to Kerkez.
We're interested to see what happens if he goes to Tottenham Hotspur, because you've got a doggy there, Jed Spence there. There's like a lot of competition for places.
Well, I'm sure this story will continue to develop, and if you're watching, you can keep up to date with that on the website, as Alex Crook and Ben Jacobs keep you up to date with all the transfer news. Let's move on to another story, Ben, that you've been right across. Tammy Abraham, the former Aston Villa striker, looks like he may be on the verge of a return.
Yeah, another fascinating saga with all manner of twists and turns. And in the end, Aston Villa had to send a delegation to Turkey because that's where Tammy Abraham is playing for Besiktas, even though technically or legally he's a Roma loanee. But the reason why it needed a Besiktas negotiation is because the Turkish club have a conditional obligation that effectively comes into force at the end of the season in terms of when they pay the 11 million to Roma, but the conditions have already been triggered. So to all intents and purposes, Tammy Abraham is a Besiktas, not Roma player, and that required a lot of shuffling around. So first of all, Besiktas will still pay Roma 11 million for Tammy Abraham, and then Villa will buy Tammy Abraham off Besiktas, and that means them paying more than 11 million. Now, at the time we are live, there are some suggestions a player may be factored in, and in addition to that, the final points of the deal are still being negotiated, but we're really close now to an agreement in principle that is expected to become one within 24 hours. It may even develop throughout the course of today by the time people are watching this. But my understanding is that Tammy Abraham will be an Aston Villa player, re-signing. He was there in 2018, 2019. He scored 26 goals in all competitions under Dean Smith as Aston Villa got promoted from the Championship to the Premier League, and this will no doubt be a signing that offers Unai Emery goals, of course, depth, competition to Ollie Watkins, and I think the fan base will really get behind it because he was the kind of player that really got bums off seats when he was last at Villa Park in 2018-2019.
Well, Ben, I saw Henry Winter put a post out on X earlier, and he actually tagged you in the post. How much of is this move for Tammy to try and get in the eyes of Thomas Tuchel ahead of the World Cup this summer? Is this a move where Tammy Abraham thinks he can make the plane?
I mean, it's possible because we know that Thomas Tuchel's prepared to pick older players, and anyone playing in the Premier League and scoring goals stands a chance. And look what a wonderful season Aston Villa are having. It's sort of baffling in many ways that Unai Emery is saying they're not even a top 5 contender when they've got something like an 8-point cushion as it stands. And it was only, about 5 weeks ago when we were talking about Aston Villa maybe even being title contenders. And are they stronger or weaker with Tammy Abraham? I would argue stronger. Is Tammy Abraham in a better or worse position to get an England call-up by being back in the Premier League? I would say better, although we got to put some respect on the name of Besiktas, and he was scoring goals there too. But ultimately, this is a very different England manager who, because he's only contracted as it stands for this World Cup, is thinking about the now. And that's why Jordan Henderson or Harry Maguire, even Ivan Toney in Saudi Arabia got one call up too. So Tuchel's going to pick a team based on form, not age, based on now, not future. And that definitely means that a player like Tammy Abraham will feel that he's got a chance. The only caveat to that, if you think about England's attackers, they're not all in a Tammy Abraham type mould. And there's actually very few, for example, that are a sort of Ollie Watkins or a Harry Kane. And because of the depth that Tuchel has in the centre of the park, many of his attackers will be classified as like a Bukayo Saka or a Phil Foden, and not everyone will therefore be a traditional number 9. And you could make an argument that maybe only one of Ollie Watkins or Tammy Abraham from Aston Villa will be on the plane in that World Cup. So there's this sort of interesting dynamic of Abraham trying to get goals in game time and catch Tuchel's attention and do great things for Aston Villa, and Watkins still being the main 9 and likely ahead of Tammy Abraham in both the Villa pecking order and also the England pecking order as well. But this for me is one of the most fascinating moves of the window. I'm really intrigued to see how Tammy Abraham does. There's so much talent there. He's such a likeable player and footballer, an off-field personality. I spent some time with him during his days at Roma, and I think this is going to be a really inspired signing for Aston Villa.
Yeah, let's hope Tammy Abraham hits the ground running there. I mean, you just mentioned Ivan Toney in Saudi Arabia, and you wrote a piece today on the talkSPORT website. Go check that out, people, if you haven't already, regarding some of the Saudi Arabian clubs' plans for summer signings. What are their ambitions for this summer, Ben?
Yeah, lots of different ambitions. So the first thing to say is that this is phase 2. Phase 1, 2023, most players got 3-year contracts. And a lot of those footballers are simply coming to the end without extension. For example, Ruben Neves as it stands, N'Golo Kante, Karim Benzema. And at that point, those players were predominantly late 20s or early 30s. Now Saudi are looking to get rid of some of the older players, still add star names, but they want peak age footballers. And virtually every Saudi club is going to try and sign 4, if not 5, any age foreigners over the age of 21, but likely the vast majority under the age of 30. And if you do the maths and you look at targets from sources I've spoken to, I'm told that's about 50 foreigners. So it's not quite the 96 that joined in 2023, but it's 50 foreign players, of which several will be box office stars and 1 or 2 might be a little bit older. So Mo Salah, Vinicius Jr. are 2 of the leading targets. We'll wait and see where Salah ends up. Al Hilal, Al Ittihad, Al Qadsiya, where Brendan Rodgers is managing, and Neom FC might be one to watch as well. Bruno Fernandes, Al Ittihad retain an interest, but there are other clubs as well, including Al Hilal, and there's that 60 million euros release clause for non-Premier League clubs that's valid during the summer. Bruno Fernandes said he felt, quote, hurt that Manchester United, in his view, wanted him to go to Saudi. Man United sources counter and say nonsense. He's part of our long-term plans and he's integral to the project. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch. Casemiro is now going to be a free agent at the end of the season after confirming that he was leaving Manchester United only yesterday. And Saudi interest in Casemiro is long-standing, but there's lots of other names I'm hearing. Harvey Elliott is one and a bit of a surprise, and he'll have a big decision to make at the end of the season if he's not terminated from his loan at Aston Villa and returns to Liverpool, and there's been no movement on that front. Yuri Tielemans, Amadou Onana, Gabriel Martinelli, Robert Lewandowski at Barcelona, to give you another older one as well. So Saudi are really serious. And then the other thing is people have spoken for a while about PIF dominance and how the same owner as Newcastle is spending all of the money and signing all of these star players, giving them crazy money. But actually, the other thing to look out for in Saudi in 2026 is a shift from that strategy. So even though PIF counts as a private owner, because a bit like Newcastle, the argument is that there's a degree of legal, at least, separation, maybe not practical, between PIF and government. The long-term plan was only for PIF to own Cristiano Ronaldo's Al Nassr, Al Hilal, Al Ittihad and Al Ahly for a medium period of time, somewhere between 3 and I'm told a maximum of 10 years. So as a consequence, there's an exit plan for PIF and all 4 of those clubs that I've mentioned. It will start with Al Hilal, very possibly in 2026. They'll have a new private non-PIF investor. And once that's done, they'll move on to the next and the next and the next. And that's led to some sources in Saudi thinking when they get around to Al Nassr, maybe Cristiano Ronaldo, who already has an equity stake in the club, might actually become a majority or a controlling owner as part of the privatization. And then when he retires, he still has a foot in Saudi Arabia and is obviously therefore able to utilize his reputation and his brand to help market the league. And there's plenty within Saudi Arabia that like that idea. It's not dissimilar to when David Beckham was given franchise rights in the MLS. So keep an eye on the on-field signings, but there's a shift in off-field strategy as well.
Yeah, I mean, that is incredible, Ben. I know you've been over to Saudi. It's a very impressive place. I'm lucky to go there with the boxing. They're very impressive. Let's go back to the Premier League, Ben. Douglas Luiz, currently on loan at Nottingham Forest, but there's rumours he may be moving within the Premier League again.
Yeah, so Chelsea are interested in Douglas Luiz. We've heard some reports about Aston Villa. That's not my understanding. He is at Nottingham Forest at the moment. He's made 14 appearances because he played last night in Europe. And there's a conditional obligation that is based on appearances that is not set to be triggered. So Chelsea and Nottingham Forest are quite aligned, I'm told. Forest are prepared to send him back to Juventus. Then it's about Chelsea and Juventus negotiating terms. And at the time we're recording this, I'm told initial club-to-club conversations are now underway. And Juventus sources insist that those are direct. Chelsea sources maintain it's still exploratory and initial and indirect. So there's a bit of conflict there between the two parties. But the direction of travel is a loan with no obligation, so either a straight loan or a loan with a buy option. And from Chelsea's point of view, they like the idea of having a more experienced body, a target that they had in previous windows, somebody that knows the Premier League, is viewed as a squad fit. And some of this is also born out of the fact that my information is in summer, Chelsea may sign a permanent central midfielder, and they might even be as lofty in their ambition as to enter the race for Elliot Anderson. At the moment, it's more Man United, Man City, but let's see whether Chelsea enter that race. But regardless of whether it's Anderson or another, Chelsea will be in the market for a midfielder. You may recall prior to Kobbie Mainoo coming back in under Michael Carrick, and now it's trending towards a very positive long-term future at Manchester United. But when it was all sort of blowing up over the summer, Chelsea were alert to the Mainoo possibility. Chelsea appreciate Adam Wharton, and there'll be others on their list as well. So can Douglas Luiz get Chelsea to the end of the season in light of the fact that Dario Isuga's had injury problems, Romeo Lavia is out, and there's a need to maybe, if Chelsea challenge on all four fronts, alleviate the burden just a little bit anyway on the likes of Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez? Or, as importantly, can Enzo Fernandez be pushed further forwards because a deeper lying midfielder arrives, and that alleviates the burden on Cole Palmer, who's had persistent groin injuries? So this is why Chelsea feel Douglas Luiz is a fit, but all signs at the moment point towards it either being a straight loan or a loan with a buy option.
A Premier League club, Ben, that has been quite quiet this window is Arsenal. However, talkSPORT understands that they've held exploratory talks with Atletico Madrid's Julian Alvarez. Can you shed any light on this story?
Very, 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 and I stressed that 3 times, exploratory. And it's kind of normal, because when you get a player of Julian Alvarez's calibre and your sporting director is Andrea Berta, and he was at Atletico Madrid, of course Berta is taking these calls, but a clear direction of travel is not yet apparent. So this is about understanding what the player is thinking and what the terms required would be on the player side in order to potentially do a deal. And that's because Arsenal are in the market for a versatile attacker. There's 2 big aims in the final third for Arsenal in summer 2026 rather than now. One is potentially an out-and-out young number 9, because Gabby Jesus could still, in one scenario, leave the club. And that's where a profile like Etta Ayong comes in. Arsenal, Barcelona, Manchester United, some say Real Madrid as well, and I do think there's a bit of substance to that. Then someone that is more versatile could be preferred, which in some ways is like Kai Havertz, can play behind the striker as the lead striker. And in addition, Arsenal are in the market for a kind of starting left winger or wide left forward. So Julian Alvarez's versatility would tick a lot of boxes. He's a player that Andrea Berta knows well, but we can't yet say Arsenal are moving. It's not anything to get excited about yet. It's a very commonplace call. And if every call of this magnitude that Berta took got out, you would realise that every single day he might have 3 calls like he had on Alvarez for other players as well. And there will be lots of other top European clubs doing exactly the same. So let's see how it develops, but nothing to shout and scream about just yet. And the other club for Julian Alvarez, which would be very interesting, although tricky financially, is Barcelona. And I'm told Deco, much like Andrea Berta, also had a recent meeting with the Julian Alvarez camps. There's a concrete possibility that Julian Alvarez moves in the summer, but we'll have to wait and see whether that is to Europe, to a club like Barcelona, or maybe even to a Premier League team. And I'll tell you something else. If Arsenal were to enter that race, they will not be, in my opinion, speaking to people in the industry, the only Premier League team involved.
Well, we'll watch that space. A very exciting player. I'll try and get a 2-1, Ben, as I know you're short on time. Lucas Paqueta, I know you put a story about regarding his future, and Jean-Philippe Mateta. What's the latest with those two's future?
Yeah, short on time because I've got to get to the gym. Yes. I know I look incredibly built, even though you can't see the bottom half of my body, but I need to earn it and work for it. But yeah, very briefly on the Mateta deal, Crystal Palace are content to keep Mateta. Oliver Glasner said today there has been no formal transfer request, but there can be a grey area, of course, when there are verbal conversations. And Palace's valuation for Mateta is at £40 million. Now that Aston Villa have got Tammy Abraham through the door, naturally it becomes less likely that they're going to go and do Mateta right away, if at all. And as a result, we need to keep a very close eye on whether Mateta can actually get a winter opportunity. His preference was always to go to Serie A, Milan a little bit earlier back, and then Juventus in this window both tried. But Villa want either him to stay, ideal preference until at least the summer, or alternatively to leave permanently and their valuation is met. They don't want a middle ground where it's a loan with a conditional obligation, or even a loan with an obligation, because that is less beneficial as far as Villa's PSR bottom line is. And remember, if Mateta goes, then Palace might actually add 2 strikers, not 1, because they already want Siddiqui Sherif, and talks are continuing with Onges, and that's a deal they'll do if they can agree it, regardless of the Mateta situation. But in addition, if Mateta was to go, Jorgen Strand-Larsen and Crystal Palace could be one to watch. And the news today is also Leeds had a bid a few days ago, I'm told, of in excess of £30 million plus add-ons rejected. With Lucas Paqueta, everyone's kind of going around in circles in terms of the negotiations. Flamengo want the player now. Paqueta wants to leave now. West Ham want to sell in the summer, not now. There's a halfway house, which is West Ham could wait until the Brazilian window closes and therefore sell Paqueta end of February or early March. And Flamengo might be prepared to be patient and wait and see whether West Ham's stance softens. As of now, it's sign him in the summer, but maybe in late February or the beginning of March if West Ham are as good as gone in one scenario. Sorry, Hammers fans, let's hope it's more positive. But if there was a situation where it looked like they were dead and buried, do West Ham suddenly decide to cash in at a slightly higher number in late February or early March comparative to waiting until the end of the season? So West Ham are saying Paqueta's going nowhere now. Flamengo are saying we want him now, but they're prepared to be patient. And the last offer that was rejected was 35 million euros and 5 million in add-ons. And that's significant because it tells you that Flamengo haven't really upped the offer from their first 40 million euros offer. They've just changed the structure a little bit in order to make it more preferable to West Ham, yet they haven't gone up in overall valuation. The other thing in all of this is it was suggested that West Ham would be prepared to do the deal now and then have Paqueta loaned back until the end of the season. And Flamengo were not too keen on that idea. So talks continue. It's a bit of a game. It's a bit of a standoff. Paqueta wants the move now. Flamengo are ready to do it now. They're probably not that far off West Ham's valuation. It's more a sticking point about the fact that West Ham don't want to lose Paqueta as they're trying to stave off relegation. So let's see how that develops. But no breakthrough as of Friday afternoon.
Talk to me about Lucas Paqueta. Is he going to play at the weekend?
No, he's got this back injury, which West Ham are now insisting is genuine. I know you've got doubts about that, but we're not expecting him to feature in the game you'll be commentating tomorrow. There has now been a formal offer from Flamengo over in Brazil. It falls below West Ham's £40 million valuation. And what's interesting about this, I mentioned it last week, the transfer window in Brazil doesn't close until March.
Right.
So I wonder if West Ham are hoping they can get Paqueta fit. He can play a few games between now and March, maybe help them put some points on the board, and then this deal could be allowed to happen.
You think his back will be okay on the private jet to Brazil? Extra cushions or maybe a bed on the jet?
His own masseuse?
Yeah, maybe a massage on the jet.
You've been watching The Window on talkSPORT, brought to you by Intuit Quickbooks. Save time and unlock growth with integrated business tools and AI automation all in one place.